My neighbor stopped me on the stairs. Do you know who comes to your house every Wednesday? I installed a hidden camera and was shocked by what I saw. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had lived in the same apartment building for 17 years. 17 peaceful years of routine, neighborly waves, and the comfort of knowing every creak in my floorboards. My husband George passed away 3 years ago, leaving me with our 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor, a modest pension, and memories that filled every corner. My daughter, Linda, visited twice a month with my granddaughter, Sophie. Life was predictable, and at 72, I'd grown to appreciate predictable. Every Wednesday, I volunteered at the community center from 10 to 3, teaching knitting to other retirees. It gave my week structure and purpose. I'd leave my apartment at 9:30, sharp, triple-checking that I'd locked the door, a habit George always teased me about. Martha, he'd say, who's going to break into an old lady's apartment? I'd laugh, but I still checked that lock 3 times. The first strange thing happened in late September. I came home from volunteering to find my kitchen faucet dripping. Odd, because I always made sure it was tightly closed before leaving. I'm particular about these things. Water bills don't pay themselves. I dismissed it, blaming my aging memory. Maybe I'd been distracted that morning. The second incident was harder to ignore. I kept my late mother's silver bracelet in my jewelry box, wrapped in the blue velvet pouch she'd given me 40 years ago. One Thursday evening, reaching for my reading glasses, I noticed the bracelet was outside the pouch, lying flat on my dresser. My heart stuttered. I lived alone. I was certain, absolutely certain, I'd put it away properly after wearing it to Linda's birthday dinner the previous weekend. I stood there gripping the dresser edge, my mind racing through impossible explanations. Had I taken it out and forgotten? Was I losing my mind? The thought terrified me more than any intruder. I mentioned it to Linda during her next visit, trying to sound casual. She patted my hand with that concerned look I'd grown to dread. Mom, you're just getting older. It happens. Maybe we should talk about it. I'm not moving to assisted living, Linda. She didn't bring it up again, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Then came that Wednesday in early October. I was returning from volunteering, my canvas bag heavy with yarn donations, when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, stopped me on the 3rd floor landing. Ella Laner Chen had lived below me for 8 years. We weren't close friends, but we'd share pleasantries, complain about the building's heating, and exchange cookies during holidays. That day, her expression was different, worried, uncomfortable. Martha, she said, gripping my arm with surprising strength for her small frame. Are you aware of who comes into your apartment every Wednesday? The hallway seemed to tilt. My canvas bag slipped from my shoulder, yarn balls bouncing down the stairs. What do you mean? Nobody comes into my apartment. Eleanor's dark eyes searched my face. Every Wednesday around 11, I hear footsteps above me, voices. I thought maybe you'd given someone a key, a cleaning service. But then today, I saw you leaving at 9:30 like always. And 20 minutes later, I heard it again. The same sounds. My mouth went dry. Footsteps. You're certain? I know what an empty apartment sounds like, Martha. And I know what footsteps sound like. Someone's been going in there while you're gone. I wanted to argue to find a logical explanation, but my mind kept returning to the dripping faucet, the displaced bracelet. How many other small things had I noticed and dismissed? The kitchen chair that seemed moved. The closet door left slightly ajar. The faint smell of unfamiliar perfume I'd convinced myself was drifting from another apartment. Every Wednesday, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Ella Laner nodded gravely. For at least the past month, maybe longer. I wasn't sure if I should say anything. I didn't want to alarm you if it was just someone you knew. But I knew nobody. I'd given no one a key. Not even Linda had one anymore. She'd lost hers years ago and never replaced it. Standing in that stairwell, watching Eleanor's concerned face, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Someone had been entering my home. Every Wednesday, while I taught elderly women how to purl stitch and make tea cozies, someone was walking through my private space, touching my things, invading the sanctuary I'd built after George's death. Who and why? What did they want? I needed to know. I needed proof. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound. Every creak became footsteps. Every distant voice became an intruder. The apartment that had sheltered me for 17 years suddenly felt foreign, violated. At 3 a.m, I got up and began searching. Really searching. I started with my jewelry box, taking inventory of every piece. Mother's bracelet, present. Grandmother's cameo brooch, present. My wedding ring set, the pearl earrings George bought for our 30th anniversary, the simple gold chain Linda gave me for Christmas. Everything seemed accounted for. So, if they weren't stealing jewelry, what were they taking? I moved to my desk drawer where I kept important documents: birth certificate, marriage license, George's death certificate, my will, bank statements. I rifled through them with trembling fingers, trying to remember their original order. Had someone photographed these, copied them? The thought made my skin crawl. The kitchen next. I opened cabinets and examined shelves. My grandmother's china service for 12 sat undisturbed. The silver platter George and I received as wedding gifts remained in its velvet-lined box. Valuable items yet untouched. What kind of thief ignored valuables? Then I noticed the flour canister. I kept emergency cash there. George's idea. Always worried about banks. $200 in 20s, rubber banded and tucked beneath the flour. I pulled it out with shaking hands and counted. $160. $40 was missing. I counted again and again. Only $160. They weren't just entering my home, they were stealing from me. Small amounts, easy to miss, easy to dismiss as my own forgetfulness. How long had this been going on? How much had they taken before I noticed? I sank into a kitchen chair, the money clutched in my flour-dusted hands. The violation felt complete. Someone was treating my home like their personal bank, my privacy like something worthless. And I'd been completely unaware, going about my Wednesdays while strangers rifled through my life. Fear washed over me in waves. Who were these people? How did they get in? Did they have a key? Had they made a copy somehow? Were they watching me, knowing my schedule, timing their intrusions perfectly? I thought about calling Linda, but I could already hear her response. Mom, are you sure? Maybe you spent that money and forgot. Maybe you miscounted. Let me call Dr. Patterson, get you checked out. She'd use this as ammunition for her assisted living campaign. Proof that I couldn't manage on my own. I thought about calling the police. But what would I tell them? That I was missing $40 and my faucet dripped? That my neighbor heard footsteps and I sometimes found things moved? They'd pat my hand just like Linda did. Treat me like a confused old woman imagining things. Number 1, I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. I needed to see their faces. The idea came to me as dawn broke over the city. Pale light filtered through my kitchen curtains. A hidden camera. One of those small ones I'd seen advertised online, the kind people use to watch their pets or check on babysitters. I'd set it up, aimed at my front door from inside the apartment, and let it record next Wednesday while I was gone. Then I'd know I'd have evidence. Faces, voices, actions. The police couldn't dismiss video footage. I felt a small spark of something I hadn't felt since George's death. Purpose. Determination. Someone thought I was an easy target, a forgetful old woman they could victimize without consequence. They thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I waited until 9 that morning when the electronics store opened. My hands were steady as I dressed, pulled on my coat, and grabbed my purse. I took the bus downtown, found the store, and approached a young man with a name tag reading Trevor. I need a hidden camera, I told him. Something small with good quality video, battery-powered, or that can run all day. And it needs to be simple. I'm not good with complicated technology. Trevor's eyebrows rose, but to his credit, he didn't question me. We have several options. What's your budget? I thought of the $160 in my flour canister. Whatever it takes. I need to catch someone who's been breaking into my home. His expression shifted to concern. Respect. Let me show you our best models. I left the store $200 poorer. I'd used my debit card for the difference, but I was carrying a box containing a tiny camera that could record for 12 hours straight. Trevor had patiently explained the setup. Charge it overnight, press the button, Hide it somewhere with a clear view, and it would capture everything. Walking home, the box tucked in my bag, I felt both terrified and empowered. Next Wednesday, I'd have my answer. Next Wednesday, the invasion of my home would end. I spent the weekend learning how to operate the camera. Trevor had been patient, but I was 72, and technology didn't come naturally. I charged it fully, practiced pressing the record button, and tested different hiding spots in my living room. Finally, I settled on the bookshelf beside my front door, tucking it behind a row of George's old mystery novels, lens pointed toward the entrance. From that angle, I'd capture anyone coming through the door. Linda called Sunday evening. "Mom, I can't make it this week. Sophie has a dance recital on Saturday. Maybe the week after." Relief flooded through me. I didn't want Linda here right now asking questions, noticing my distraction. "Of course, sweetheart. Send me photos of the recital." Tuesday night, I barely slept. I rehearsed my Wednesday routine in my mind, checking every detail. I needed everything to appear completely normal. No changes to my schedule, nothing to alert whoever was doing this. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. The October wind rattled my windows as I prepared breakfast, my hands trembling slightly as I poured coffee. At 8:30, I activated the camera. One press, the red light blinking twice, then going dark as Trevor had promised. I positioned it carefully behind the novels, testing the angle one final time. At 9:15, I gathered my canvas bag and coat. Before leaving, I did something I'd never done before. I placed a single strand of my white hair across the doorframe at knee height, pressed against the wood where it would be invisible unless you knew to look. If someone opened the door, the hair would fall. An old trick from one of George's detective novels. I triple-checked my lock, then headed downstairs. Ella Laner Chen was collecting her mail. She looked up and gave me a meaningful glance. I managed a small nod. She knew today was Wednesday. She knew what I was hoping to discover. "Good luck," she whispered. The community center felt impossibly far away. I taught my knitting class on autopilot, my mind racing with possibilities. Who would I see on that camera? A stranger, a neighbor, someone I knew. The hours crawled past like days. At 2:30, I couldn't bear it anymore. I told the center director I felt unwell, not entirely a lie, and caught the early bus home. My hand shook as I unlocked my apartment door at 3:15. The hair strand was gone, lying on the hallway floor. Someone had been here. I closed the door behind me, locked it, engaged the chain, and retrieved the camera from its hiding spot. The red light blinked once when I pressed the stop button. 12 hours of footage saved. I connected it to my laptop. Linda had given me one last Christmas gift, insisting I learn email, and Trevor had showed me how to download files. It took 15 minutes of fumbling, but finally the video appeared on screen. I pressed play. For the first hour, nothing. An empty apartment. Morning light shifting across my furniture. I fast-forwarded, watching time compress on screen. At 10:47 a.m., my front door opened. I stopped breathing. A woman entered first. Mid-40s, expensively dressed, dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. She moved with familiar confidence, pulling off her coat like she owned the place. Behind her came another woman, younger, maybe 30, blonde, carrying a large designer purse. I didn't recognize either of them. "She'll be gone until 3, the dark-haired woman said clearly. The camera's audio was excellent. "We have plenty of time," the blonde woman laughed. Actually laughed as she walked into my kitchen. "I still can't believe she has no idea. How long has it been now?" 6 months, the first woman replied. "Maybe longer. Hard to keep track." 6 months. They've been violating my home for 6 months. I watched, horror mounting as they moved through my apartment like it was theirs. The dark-haired woman opened my refrigerator, took out orange juice, and poured herself a glass. The blonde settled onto my couch, George's favorite spot, and kicked off her expensive shoes. "Did you bring the checkbook?" the dark-haired woman asked. The blonde pulled something from her purse. "My checkbook, the one I kept in my desk drawer." "Just one check today," the dark-haired woman said. "We can't be greedy. Small amounts like always." She's already questioning her memory. If we push too hard, she might actually investigate. The blonde woman, writing in my checkbook and forging my signature, looked up with a smirk. Martha's too old and confused to investigate anything. Linda says she's getting worse every week. Another few months and she'll be in a facility anyway, Linda says. The words hit me like a physical blow. I paused the video, staring at the frozen image of these strangers in my home discussing my daughter. How did they know, Linda? What did they mean, Linda says. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. I forced myself to resume the video. I watched the entire video 3 times. Each viewing revealed new violations. They'd gone through my mail, photographed documents, taken cash from my desk, not just the flour canister. The blonde had tried on my mother's bracelet, laughing about how vintage it looked. They'd eaten my food, used my bathroom, sat on my furniture, discussing their next moves like strategists planning a campaign against me, a 72-year-old widow they dismissed as senile. The worst part came near the end. The dark-haired woman, standing at my window overlooking the street, said, "Linda's pushing for the memory evaluation next month. Once the doctor confirms dementia, we'll have her declared incompetent. Then Linda gets power of attorney and this apartment becomes much easier to access." Dementia power of attorney. Linda, my own daughter, was part of this. I spent that evening in a fog of betrayal and fury. Linda, my only child, the baby I'd raised, whose college I'd paid for with George's life insurance money, who I'd supported through her divorce, who brought Sophie to visit. She knew she was coordinating with these strangers, feeding them information about my supposed mental decline. But I wasn't declining. I was being gaslit, systematically manipulated into questioning my own sanity. By Thursday morning, my grief had crystallized into cold determination. I made copies of the video file and saved it to 3 different USB drives. I hid one in my apartment, gave one to Eleanor Chen with strict instructions to keep it safe, and mailed one to my lawyer, Harold Morrison, with a note requesting he call me urgently. Harold called Friday afternoon. "Martha, I received your package. I've reviewed the footage. This is serious criminal activity. Breaking and entering, theft, forgery. We need to contact the police immediately." "Not yet," I said. "I need to know who these women are, how they got my key, and I need to understand Linda's involvement before we make this official." Harold was silent for a moment. "Martha, if Linda is compromised or involved in elder abuse, I need proof of that, too. The video shows them mentioning her name, but not her explicit participation. I won't destroy my daughter's life on speculation." "You're being too generous." "I'm being a mother." I spent the weekend researching. I printed screenshots from the video and studied the women's faces. The dark-haired woman wore expensive jewelry and designer clothes. This wasn't about poverty or desperation. The blonde carried a purse I recognized from magazine ads, $1, 500 retail. Monday morning, I did something that felt like betrayal but was necessary. I installed a second camera in my living room, hidden in a decorative plant. If they returned this Wednesday, I'd capture even more. But I also took my first official step. I went to the bank where I'd done business for 20 years and spoke with the manager, Susan Patterson. "I need to put an alert on my account," I told her, sliding the forged check across her desk. "Someone has been writing unauthorized checks. I need every check verified by phone before it's processed. And I want a full accounting of any checks cashed in the past year that I didn't write." Susan's face paled as she examined the forgery. "Mrs. Walsh, this is fraud. Have you contacted the police?" "I will, but first I need documentation of every theft." "Can you help me?" She could. By Tuesday afternoon, I had a printout showing 17 checks totaling just over $6,000 written over the past 8 months. Small amounts, $200, $350, $475, spaced out enough to avoid immediate detection. Each one perfectly forged with my signature, $6,000 from a widow living on a pension. Tuesday evening, Linda called. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe we should schedule that appointment with Dr. Patterson just to check your memory. Make sure everything's okay." My hand tightened on the phone. "Why would we do that, Linda? You've been forgetting things, moving things around. I'm just worried about you." "I'm fine, Linda." "Mom, please do it for me. For Sophie. We want you healthy and safe." Safe. The word tasted like poison. Safe from whom? The thieves she'd apparently conspired with. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up before she could push further. Wednesday morning arrived. I activated both cameras, placed my hair strand across the door, and left for the community center at exactly 9:30. But I didn't go to the center. Instead, I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment building, my phone in my hand. Eleanor Chen on speed dial. At 11:15, Eleanor texted, "They just went in. 2 women." My heart hammered. They'd returned confident in their routine, certain of my absence. But this Wednesday was different. At 11:30, I walked back to my building, climbed the stairs quietly, stood outside my apartment door, listening, voices inside, laughter. I unlocked the door with my key and walked into my own home. The 2 women froze. The dark-haired one was at my desk. The blonde was emerging from my bedroom, my mother's bracelet in her hand. "Hello," I said calmly. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." The dark-haired woman recovered first, smiled that same confident smile I'd seen on the video. "Martha, we were just, Linda asked us to check on you." "Don't." My voice was ice. "I have video of every visit, every theft, every forged check. I have bank records, police reports being filed, and a lawyer on retainer. The only question now is whether you leave immediately or wait for the police to arrive and arrest you in my home." The blonde woman's face drained of color. The bracelet slipped from her fingers. "Now get out of my apartment," I continued, "and tell Linda, tell my daughter that her scheme has failed." They scrambled for the door, grabbing coats and purses. But the dark-haired woman stopped in the doorway, her pleasant mask finally dropping. "You have no idea what you're doing, Martha. Linda has been planning this for over a year. You're going to look like a paranoid old woman making accusations against people trying to help you. Who do you think they'll believe? Get out." They left. I closed the door, engaged every lock, and sank onto my couch, shaking violently. I'd done it. Confronted them. But the dark-haired woman's threat echoed in my mind. Who would believe me? A 72-year-old widow against her own daughter. I needed 3 days to recover from that confrontation. 3 days where I jumped at every sound, checked my locks obsessively, and barely ate. Ella Lehner brought me soup and sat with me while I cried. Not from fear, but from the devastating betrayal of realizing my daughter had orchestrated this. On the 4th day after the confrontation, Linda called. I stared at her name on my phone screen for 3 rings before answering. "Mom, we need to talk." Her voice was soft, concerned. The same voice that had comforted me after George's death, that had read bedtime stories to Sophie. "I heard you had some visitors, some confusion about people being in your apartment." There was no confusion, Linda. Silence. "Then Mom, Denise, and Patricia were doing me a favor. I asked them to check on you while I couldn't visit. I was worried about you being alone." Denise and Patricia. So now I had names for my tormentors. The women who've been stealing from me for 8 months. Who forged my checks? Who have you been feeding information about my supposed mental decline? That's not Mom. You're not understanding the situation. They're friends trying to help. If you found money missing, you probably just forgot where you put it. This is exactly what I've been worried about. The gaslighting was masterful, calm, reasonable, turning my reality into delusion. A month ago, it might have worked. I might have doubted myself, questioned my perceptions, but I had video evidence now, Linda. I have security footage of them in my apartment. I have bank records of forged checks. I've already filed a police report. The only question is whether your name appears in that report. Another silence, longer this time. When Linda spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder. Colder. "You filed a police report against my friends. Mom, do you understand what you've done? Denise is a lawyer. Patricia's husband is a judge. You're accusing respected professionals of theft. Based on what? Your paranoia. Based on evidence. Evidence that will make you look unstable. An elderly woman seeing conspiracies, accusing innocent people. This is exactly why we need that medical evaluation. Mom, before you do something that can't be undone." There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. Submit to the evaluation they declare would show dementia or be painted as a delusional old woman harassing respected citizens. I'm not taking any evaluation, Linda, and I'm not dropping the charges. Then you're making a serious mistake. Linda's mask had fully slipped. Now Denise and Patricia will sue you for defamation. They'll prove you're mentally incompetent. They'll take this apartment, your savings, everything. And I won't be able to protect you. Protect me? You orchestrated this. I tried to help you transition to care gracefully. You're too stubborn to see you can't manage alone anymore. This apartment is too much for you. The money from selling it could give you a beautiful assisted living situation. This is my home, Linda. It's a prison keeping you stuck in the past. Dad's gone, Mom. He's been gone 3 years. You're alone in this apartment talking to his memory, refusing to move forward. I was trying to help you see that you need more support than I can give. But now you've turned a compassionate intervention into a criminal case. My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. Get out of my life, Linda, and tell your friends they'll be hearing from my lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. Then I sat on my couch and cried for the daughter I'd lost, not to death, but to greed and manipulation. Eleanor found me there an hour later. I'd given her a key after the confrontation, unable to bear being completely alone. She sat beside me, held my hand while I explained everything. The phone call, Linda's threats, the realization that my only child had orchestrated my victimization. You need more than a lawyer, Eleanor said finally. You need support. People who will stand with you, verify your mental competence, witness your strength. I have you. You need more than one elderly neighbor. Eleanor pulled out her phone. My son is a social worker specializing in elder abuse. My daughter-in-law is a gerontologist. Let me call them. Let me bring in people who understand these situations, who can document that you're clear-headed and capable. I wanted to refuse, to insist I could handle this alone. But pride wouldn't protect me from Linda's machinations. Okay, I whispered. By the weekend, Eleanor's son, David, had visited my apartment, interviewed me for 2 hours, reviewed my evidence. He was professional, thorough, and most importantly, he believed me. Mrs. Walsh, what you're describing is textbook financial exploitation combined with psychological manipulation, he said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. Your daughter and her associates were systematically gaslighting you to facilitate theft and set up a conservatorship grab. You did exactly the right thing, documenting everything. Will it be enough? Linda says her friends will paint me as paranoid. David smiled grimly. Your video evidence, bank records, and my professional evaluation will counter that narrative. But I want to bring in Dr. Sarah Kim, my wife, the gerontologist. She can conduct a full cognitive assessment and document your mental competency. It'll remove any question about your ability to make decisions. When? Tomorrow, if you're willing. I was willing. Dr. Kim arrived Sunday afternoon. A calm, efficient woman in her 40s who spent 3 hours putting me through memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about current events, and personal history. She was patient, never condescending, treating me like an intelligent adult rather than a confused child. Monday morning, David called. Dr. Kim's evaluation is complete. Mrs. Walsh, you scored above average for your age group on every metric. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning is sound, and there's zero indication of cognitive decline. She's writing a formal report that will stand up in any legal proceeding. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift slightly from my chest. I had evidence. I had expert testimony. I had people who believed me. I wasn't alone anymore. But Linda wasn't finished. That evening, she sent an email copying Denise and Patricia, informing me she was reluctantly pursuing guardianship proceedings for my own protection. Attached were statements from neighbors claiming I'd seemed confused, forgetful, and increasingly paranoid. Neighbors I barely knew, whose names I didn't recognize. Denise and Patricia were making their move, using their connections to manufacture evidence of my incompetence. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. They came on a Thursday evening, 5 days after Linda's email. I was heating soup when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw all 3 of them, Linda, Denise, and Patricia, standing in my hallway with carefully composed expressions of concern. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. What do you want? Linda stepped forward, eyes red as if she'd been crying. Mom, please, can we talk? Really talk. I hate how things ended between us. Denise, the dark-haired lawyer, added gently. Mrs. Walsh, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We only wanted to help. Patricia, the blonde, nodded earnestly. We feel awful that our intentions were so misconstrued. It was a performance, a carefully rehearsed attempt to appear reasonable, conciliatory, and victimized by my accusations. But I'd seen their real faces on video, heard their real voices discussing my exploitation. Say what you came to say, I told them. You have 5 minutes. They exchanged glances. Then Linda took a breath. Mom, we want to drop everything. The guardianship petition, the defamation concerns, all of it. We just want to move forward as a family in exchange for what? Denise smiled that professional smile I'd come to hate. All we ask is that you withdraw the police report. Accept that there were misunderstandings on all sides. Let us help you downsize into a more manageable living situation. We found a beautiful facility. No. Patricia's pleasant expression flickered. Mrs. Walsh, you're not being reasonable. We're offering you a way out of a very messy legal situation. Do you understand what will happen if we proceed? The discovery process alone will be invasive. Your medical records, financial history, personal life, all of it examined publicly. Then examine it. I have nothing to hide. Linda's tears vanished, replaced by frustration. Mom, for God's sake, think about Sophie. Do you want your granddaughter to watch her grandmother drag her mother through court? To see you portrayed in the media as a paranoid old woman harassing innocent people? I'd rather she see her grandmother standing up to thieves and manipulators, even when they're family. The masks were cracking now. Denise stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost threatening. Martha, I've practiced law for 20 years. I have connections throughout this city's legal system. If we go to court, I will bury you in paperwork, drag this out for years, drain every penny you have in legal fees, and at the end, you'll lose because I'm very, very good at what I do. Then I guess we'll see how good you are at defending theft and fraud charges. Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. You think you're so clever with your little cameras and your printouts, but who do you think the jury will believe? A confused widow whose own daughter says she's declining or respected professionals with sterling reputations. The jury will believe video evidence, will they? Denise's smile was predatory now. Video can be misinterpreted, Mrs. Walsh. Two concerned friends checking on an elderly woman at her daughter's request. The cash you claim we took, you'll have to prove it was there. The checks easily explained as you giving us money and forgetting. Your memory issues are well documented by you with manufactured statements. Linda stepped forward, and for a moment I saw something almost like genuine emotion in her eyes. Pain maybe, or regret. Mom, I'm your daughter. I loved you. I still love you. But you're making this impossible. We came here to offer peace, to give you a way to age gracefully with support. Instead, you're choosing war. You chose war when you sent thieves into my home. I sent friends to check on you. Linda's composure shattered. You're so stuck in this apartment, this shrine to Dad. You can't see that you need help. You're isolated, paranoid, seeing conspiracies. I see what's real. And what's real is that my daughter tried to steal my home and my independence. Denise placed a hand on Linda's shoulder, restraining her. This is pointless. She's too far gone to see reason. I see perfectly clearly. Do you? Patricia's voice was venomous, now all pretense of kindness gone. You're a lonely old woman who can't accept that her life has become small and meaningless. You're clinging to this apartment because it's all you have left. But it's not enough, Martha. You're not enough. You never were. The cruelty was designed to wound, to provoke me into an emotional response they could later use as evidence of instability. I refused to give it to them. Get out of my home. Denise's eyes hardened. We tried to do this the easy way. Now we'll do it our way. By the time we're finished, you'll lose everything. Your home, your savings, your granddaughter, your dignity, and Linda will have guardianship whether you consent or not. We'll see. They left. Linda laughed, pausing at the door. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am sorry it came to this. So am I. The door closed behind them. I engaged all 3 locks, then leaned against the door, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from fury. They'd come to intimidate me, to break my resolve with threats and manipulation. Instead, they'd shown me exactly who they were, and they'd done it on camera. I'd installed a new one after the confrontation, hidden in my hallway clock. Every word, every threat, every admission, all documented. I allowed myself one moment of fear, feeling the weight of what I was fighting. Then I let that fear transform into steel, hard determination. They wanted war, they'd get it. The hearing for emergency guardianship took place 3 weeks later in a sterile courtroom that smelled of furniture polish and old anxiety. Linda sat with Denise and Patricia at one table, flanked by 2 additional lawyers Denise had brought. I sat at another with Harold Morrison and David Chen, Ella Lehner's social worker son who'd agreed to testify. Judge Catherine Bradford presided, a stern woman in her 60s who'd reviewed all preliminary filings. She looked tired, probably from seeing too many of these cases. Families fighting over elderly relatives, money disguised as concern. Denise stood to present their case. She was polished, professional, and sympathetic. Your Honor, this is a heartbreaking situation. Mrs. Linda Porter is here seeking emergency guardianship of her mother, Martha Walsh, who has demonstrated increasing signs of dementia and paranoid delusions. Mrs. Walsh has made serious accusations against respected members of our community, including myself and Mrs. Patricia Henderson. These accusations are baseless and stem from Mrs. Walsh's deteriorating mental state. She presented manufactured neighbor statements and testimony from a doctor who'd never examined me but was willing to opine that my behavior suggested cognitive decline. Photographs of my apartment, they claimed, showed hoarding and poor self-care. Actually, it was just my comfortable, lived-in home. Mrs. Walsh is a danger to herself, Denise concluded. She lives alone, refuses help, and is now engaging in paranoid behavior that could lead to her harming others through false accusations. Her daughter, who loves her dearly, is requesting guardianship to ensure Mrs. Walsh receives appropriate care. Linda took the stand, crying genuine tears. Your Honor, my mother was an amazing woman, sharp, independent, strong. But since my father died 3 years ago, I've watched her decline. She forgets things, moves them, and can't remember doing it. She becomes confused about events. I asked my friends Denise and Patricia to check on her while I was busy with my daughter. Instead of appreciating the help, Mom accused them of breaking in and stealing. None of it makes sense. Does your mother have a history of paranoia? Judge Bradford asked. No, Your Honor. This is new. That's what makes it so frightening. She's not the woman who raised me anymore. Patricia testified next, describing how she and Denise had volunteered to check on Linda, only to be accused of theft and harassment. We were trying to help a vulnerable woman. Instead, we've been dragged into legal proceedings and accused of crimes we never committed. It's been devastating. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed it myself. Judge Bradford looked sympathetic, and my stomach dropped. Then Harold Morrison stood. Your Honor, if I may present our evidence, he began with Dr. Sarah Kim's cognitive evaluation, comprehensive and recent, showing no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Judge Bradford read it carefully, her expression shifting slightly. The court is aware. Mrs. Walsh underwent this evaluation after these proceedings began? She asked. Yes, Your Honor. Because she was accused of incompetence, she sought professional verification of her mental state. Dr. Kim is prepared to testify if needed. Continue. Harold presented the bank records next. 17 forged checks, professionally analyzed and confirmed as forgeries. Your Honor, Mrs. Walsh maintains meticulous financial records. These checks were written without her knowledge or consent over an 8-month period, Denise objected. There's no proof my client wrote those checks. Mrs. Walsh could have written them herself and forgotten. That's true, Harold agreed calmly. Which is why we have this. He pressed play on the laptop. The courtroom screen filled with video footage from my hidden camera. The date and timestamp showed clearly, a Wednesday morning, 6 weeks ago. The court watched in silence as Denise and Patricia entered my apartment, talked casually about my absence, and most damningly discussed forging checks. Small amounts like always. Denise's voice came through crystal clear. She's already questioning her memory. We pushed too hard. She might actually investigate. Patricia on screen writing in my checkbook. Martha's too old and confused to investigate anything. Linda says she's getting worse every week. Linda's face drained of color. Judge Bradford watched the entire 12-minute segment without interruption. When it ended, she looked at Denise with an expression that could freeze fire. Counselor, you entered Mrs. Walsh's home without permission. Denise stood quickly, composure fracturing. Your Honor, we had implied permission through Linda. Did you forge checks in Mrs. Walsh's name? Those statements on the video were, we were joking. It was taken out of context. Context. Harold Morrison stood. Your Honor, we have similar footage from 4 other Wednesdays, all showing the same pattern. We also have this. He played the hallway camera footage from their recent visit where all 3 women had threatened me, admitted their scheme, and explicitly stated their intentions to strip me of my assets and autonomy. You tried to do this the easy way. Now we'll do it our way. Denise's voice echoed through the courtroom. By the time we're finished, you'll lose everything. Patricia on screen. You're a lonely old woman who can't accept that her life has become small and meaningless. Linda crying. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am sorry it came to this. Judge Bradford's face had gone from stern to furious. Mrs. Porter, did you coordinate with these women to enter your mother's home without her knowledge? Linda was crying again, but these tears were panic. I just wanted to help her. The apartment was too much for her alone. I thought if we could just answer the question. Did you coordinate this? Yes, whispered Broken. Miss Reed, Mrs. Henderson, you are both in contempt of this court for presenting false testimony. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, breaking and entering, theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Denise found her voice. Your Honor, my reputation. I'm an attorney. You were an attorney. I'll be recommending your disbarment. Patricia stood shakily. Please, my husband is a judge. Your husband will be informed of these proceedings. Bailiff, escort these women from my courtroom. The bailiff moved forward. Denise and Patricia were led out, both stunned into silence. Linda remained seated, staring at her hands. Judge Bradford turned to me. Mrs. Walsh, I apologize that you were subjected to this abuse. The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. I'm issuing a restraining order prohibiting Linda Porter and her associates from contacting you or entering your property. Do you wish to pursue criminal charges against your daughter? Every eye in the courtroom turned to me. This was the moment, the choice between justice and mercy, between punishment and family. I looked at Linda, my daughter, the baby I'd rocked through nightmares, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college graduation had made me cry with pride. Yes, I said quietly. I do. Linda's sobs echoed through the silent courtroom. So ordered, we were adjourned. The district attorney's office moved quickly. With video evidence and judicial recommendation, they had everything needed for prosecution. Denise Reed and Patricia Henderson were arrested within 48 hours of the hearing, charged with burglary, grand theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Patricia's husband, Judge Martin Henderson, tried to use his influence to make the case disappear. Instead, an ethics investigation revealed he'd been aware of his wife's activities and had even helped her research conservatorship law to exploit vulnerable seniors. He resigned before he could be removed from the bench. Denise fought her charges with the desperation of someone watching her entire life collapse. She hired expensive lawyers, filed motions, and tried to paint herself as the victim of a vindictive old woman's fantasies, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video doesn't lie. Forged checks don't lie. Bank records don't lie. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I testified, showing the jury my documentation, explaining how I discovered the theft, and describing the systematic gaslighting meant to make me question my sanity. The prosecutor was thorough, damning, relentless. Denise's lawyer tried to argue that they had implied permission through Linda, that this was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The video of them discussing my declining memory and their plan to have me declared incompetent destroyed that defense. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Denise Reed was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution. $6,000 in stolen funds plus $20,000 in damages for emotional distress. Her law license was permanently revoked, the career she'd spent decades building destroyed. Patricia Henderson received 3 years, her sentence lighter because she'd cooperated with investigators, providing details about how the scheme had begun. Apparently, Linda had approached them at a charity function, complaining about her difficult mother, who refused to downsize and was sitting on valuable real estate that could fund Linda's daughter's college education. They'd offered to help for a cut of the proceeds. Of course, Linda's trial was separate. She faced lesser charges, conspiracy and accessory to theft. But the betrayal cut deeper because she was my daughter. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 18 months probation, community service, mandatory counseling, and full restitution of her share of stolen funds. She refused, insisting on trial, believing a jury would sympathize with a daughter trying to help her aging mother. They didn't. I testified against my own daughter in a packed courtroom, describing how she'd undermined my confidence, fed information to her criminal associates, and tried to have me declared incompetent to seize control of my home and finances. I presented emails where she discussed the timing of my placement in assisted living, the profit from selling my apartment, and how to divide the money between herself and her partners. It was all about money. My daughter had sold me out for profit. The jury found Linda guilty. The judge, a different one this time, a woman who'd seen too many families destroyed by greed, showed no mercy. Mrs. Porter, you betrayed the most sacred bond that exists, the trust between parent and child. You exploited your mother's grief over losing her husband and her vulnerability as an aging woman living alone. You conspired to steal her home, her independence, her dignity. The law allows me to sentence you to up to 5 years. I'm sentencing you to 3, with the possibility of parole after 18 months if you complete court-mandated therapy. Linda collapsed. Her lawyer caught her. She was led away to begin serving her sentence. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not grief. Just a vast echoing emptiness where my daughter used to be. But justice wasn't finished. Ella Chen's son, David, helped me file a civil suit against all 3 women. We sought compensation for emotional distress, violation of privacy, and punitive damages. Their criminal convictions made the civil case straightforward. The judge awarded me $150,000. Denise Reed's savings were gone. Patricia Henderson's husband's pension was garnished. Linda's modest savings account was seized. They would be paying me monthly for years, a constant reminder of their crimes. I donated half of the settlement to the local elder abuse prevention program. The other half I put in a trust for Sophie, Linda's daughter. My granddaughter was 13 now, confused and hurt by her mother's imprisonment. She needed to know that her grandmother hadn't abandoned her, that this wasn't about revenge, but about accountability. The restraining orders remained in place. Linda, Denise, and Patricia were forbidden from contacting me for 5 years. I wouldn't have to see them, speak to them, or acknowledge their existence. My apartment, the home they'd tried to steal, remained mine. I had it rekeyed, installed a security system, and Eleanor Chen checked on me daily, not because I needed supervision, but because we'd become genuine friends through this ordeal. I attended every parole hearing when the time came. I stood before the board and explained calmly and thoroughly why early release was inappropriate, why these women needed to serve their full sentences to understand the gravity of what they'd done. Denise was denied parole. Patricia was denied parole. Linda was denied parole. They would serve every single day of their sentences. Justice, complete and uncompromising. 2 years after the trial, my life had transformed in ways I'd never imagined. The apartment that Linda had tried to steal became a sanctuary. I'd redecorated George's study into a bright office where I volunteered with the Elder Abuse Hotline 3 days a week. My story had made regional news, and I was receiving calls from other seniors who suspected exploitation but didn't know what to do. David Chan and I developed a workshop called Protecting Your Independence that we taught monthly. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was an advocate. Ella Chan and I took watercolor painting classes, joined a book club, and traveled to Boston. At 74, I had more friends and social activities than I'd had in decades. Sophie, my granddaughter, visited once a month with her father, Frank, who'd been horrified by his ex-wife's crimes. She was 15 now, thoughtful and kind. "Grandma, do you hate Mom?" she asked me once. "I hate what she did, but I'm just sad that she chose greed over love. She writes me letters from prison. You can love your mother and still know what she did was wrong." My life was purposeful, rich, and connected. Everything Linda had claimed I'd lost, I'd actually found. Meanwhile, my former tormentors discovered that consequences are permanent. Denise Reed served her full 4 years, disbarred and convicted of exploiting a vulnerable senior. No one would hire her. She was working retail for minimum wage, living in a studio apartment. 20 years of career building obliterated. Patricia Henderson's fall was even more dramatic. Her husband's judicial career ended in scandal. After serving 3 years, she emerged to find her marriage dissolved and her children refusing to speak to her. She'd lost everything and moved to another state, but criminal records follow you. Google never forgets. Linda suffered most of all. She served 20 months, emerging older, harder, and broken. She'd lost custody of Sophie, her job, and her home. Sophie stopped reading her letters. "I don't want to see her when she gets out," she told me. "That's self-protection, honey." Linda violated parole 6 months later, failed a drug test, and missed therapy. She was sent back to complete her sentence, plus additional time. All 3 women paid me $500 monthly for years. Every check I split between Sophie's college fund and elder advocacy programs, their crime-funded protection for other vulnerable seniors. There was poetry in that. If something feels wrong in your life, trust yourself. Document everything. Seek help. You are not confused. You deserve dignity and justice. What would you do if your own family betrayed you? Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, and never let anyone make you doubt your worth.